The woman knocked out cold during that violent brawl in Cincinnati joins NewsNation for her first network interview. Hear what happened in her own words tonight. I'm Elizabeth Vargas, and America's News starts right now.
Tonight,
I could hear the victims laying on the ground begging for help.
Holly's story, one of the victims of that vicious Cincinnati street brawl, sits down with NewsNation why she thinks those bystanders weren't so innocent. Then is a historic meeting ahead. Russia's Putin and President Trump heading toward a sit-down and possibly a showdown. Plus, meet the witches of Bucha. We're live on the Ukraine front lines with a group of women defending their homeland not with broomsticks, but with assault rifles. And later, a possible Alzheimer's breakthrough. A new study shows how the cheap metal lithium could potentially reverse the disease and restore brain function.
All right, lots to get to tonight, but we begin in Cincinnati, where demands for justice have not subsided nearly 2 weeks after that brutal beatdown in downtown Cincinnati that was recorded by bystanders. Details are still scarce about exactly what happened that night. Police have arrested and charged 6 suspects for throwing fists, but they've been cagey with the information that they've released to the public so far. Perhaps we can get some answers tonight from this woman who has become the battered face of this attack. She goes by the name Holly, just Holly, to protect her identity. Video from that night shows her getting viciously punched in the face, knocked out cold as she hit the ground. She went into hiding after the attack, but tonight she's speaking out, calling for bystanders to be prosecuted. She says they could and should have done more to protect her and others.
The biggest thing that I think really upsets me is the desensitization of humans, where there's a brutal attack, attempted murder in front of you, and they all think, oh, cool, let me get my phone and record it. I truly hope that in the future there's some sort of bill to where somebody has to be prosecuted or at least fined if they don't call 911 first to save someone's life.
Police have said only one out of dozens and dozens of witnesses that night called 911. As for Holly, she says she is suffering excruciating pain all the time. She says she's recovering from brain trauma. Our own Rich McHugh spoke with her this afternoon to learn more about her recovery, what exactly happened that night, and what needs to change with her city going forward. Rich joins us from a rainy Cincinnati. Rich, what did you learn? What was it like talking to her today?
Well, Elizabeth, this was one of the, excuse me, this rain is really kicking up. This was one of the most gut-wrenching interviews that I've ever been a part of. She is still struggling a lot, and she's really struggling mentally and health-wise. And she says she still hasn't heard from the mayor, hasn't heard from the chief of police, hasn't heard from any city officials, and she wants people to hear what she has to say. Very in the raw, like she wants to hear the truth. So let's do that. Let's listen to her right now.
I can feel it coming on, and then I'll just go curl up in a ball and start crying.
What have they told you about, after all these tests, what's your diagnosis?
So unfortunately, my brain is still really swollen, but I am having a lot of neurological issues. I'm able to put together my words sometimes, and then sometimes I can't even talk at all. And the doctors are just saying, we're going to keep running tests, but until the swelling goes down, we don't know. So I'm very hopeful, but I might have to have a caretaker my whole life if it's not just the swelling. So that's pretty scary.
I was just about to ask, how are you doing emotionally?
Not okay. I'm not okay at all, and I'm not going to be okay for a really long time. Bruises heal, but I don't think people talk enough about mental side effects of something very traumatic that happens. I think I'll probably be in therapy for a while, but also just with the neurological stuff, I'm terrified to go outside. I have panic attacks. It's like full-blown panic attacks. My whole body just starts tingling, and it's like I can't breathe. That it's like I'm there in that moment again, over and over every time I have a panic attack, and where my brain is having trouble understanding like what's real, what's not real. It feels like it's happening over and over again until my brain's like, I'm safe, I'm okay. But then it's like that moment of panic of like thinking that I'm there. So no, I'm not okay at all.
I want to go back to that moment. Describe for me what, from your perspective, what happened right there, and then what you remember of it.
I kept thinking the police would show up, and kept waiting and waiting while watching them get kicked and stomped and punched. And I could hear, you can't hear in the video, but I could hear the victims laying on the ground begging for help. And one of them specifically had said, please God, someone help me, please God, crying out to God. And I knew that might be his last words. And even though I didn't know him, I had just met him, I still felt as a human, and it was my duty to jump. Nobody was gonna help, and the police weren't showing up, and I wasn't gonna stand there and just watch him die and then say, well, there's nothing I could have done about it. So I jumped in, and you couldn't hear my voice, but my voice, I was saying, you can see me in the video saying something, and I'm saying, stop, please stop, just stop. And then that's when the woman attacked me from behind, and then the guy came and punched me from the side. I never saw it coming. I think that if somebody had called 911, this would have been broken up way before we all got beat or attacked, or whatever you want to say.
The fact that one person called 911, I mean, you were laying there within an inch of your life, and there was only one 911 call. And
it was a victim who had gotten away and was hiding in between cars. That's who called 911. It was nobody in the crowd. Somebody who had just got curb stomped was able to get away and go call 911.
How does that make you feel?
That makes me angry. That makes me sad, and that just makes me feel disgusted. And so all of it in like a pot of what is going on with society.
What's your first recollection?
I remember the police coming, and I was very, I was happy. I was like, oh my gosh, this is great. We're gonna be saved. And it was one police car, 2 officers, very short with us, kind of.
Short with you?
Yeah. They were just kind of blowing us off. I'm like, you guys don't care. They didn't call for backup. They didn't call an ambulance. And they just acted like we were just some little hoodlums, and they were gonna talk to us to appease us, but not really do anything.
Describe for me, you were there at the club, who you were with, and how you think this all started.
It was a friend's birthday, and I thought, what the heck, it'll be fun. I haven't been to a club in about 10 years. What's the harm? So some of us met up in Cincinnati with some other people I'd never even met before, and went to a birthday party. And I'm just gonna say wrong place at the wrong time. There's an ongoing investigation, so I can't give details. But let's just say we are victims, and I know for a fact that I did absolutely nothing wrong other than to try and help someone.
The man who hit you and knocked you out has an extensive criminal rap sheet.
Huge. He should have been in prison for a very long time, just based off of the last thing that he did, let alone all of the other things. It is unfathomable to me, the fact that he was just running around able to cause chaos.
Have you spoken, has anybody from the city leadership reached out to you?
Not
Has the mayor, has the chief of police reached out?
No. And I know yesterday at the press conference they said that they would be reaching out, or somebody said that they would be reaching out. They still haven't. I'm sure they're busy with whatever. But no, they have not.
What do you think about that?
I find it bizarre. I find it, well, I just wish that they would at least have made an apology for causing public panic and smear campaign against me.
Your experience has certainly struck a nerve in America. Is there anything that you'd like to say?
I just want to say that if I don't hate the people that did this to me and I can pray for them, then I just beg of anyone who wants to go out there and retaliate and use their fist. And you can be angry, and that's okay, but just use it as a way to make change for positive future.
All right, the woman known as Holly, just Holly, because she says she's been getting death threats, if you can believe it, after all of this, and has gone into hiding. She was there talking to our own Rich McHugh, who's done some stellar reporting on this story. I want to get some reaction now from retired NYPD Lieutenant Joe Cardinale. Joe, first of all, let's talk to me about this bystander effect. It's not new. It's been around for decades, since the Kitty Genovese murder in 1964. But in this case, we're talking dozens and dozens, I said, but actually police say it could have been close to 100 people who were in that crowd watching this happen. And they didn't just watch it and not call 911. They recorded it on their phones.
You know, it's funny you use Kitty Genovese, because that's exactly what something like this, brings on. This is the bystander effect, where they just don't want to get involved. I don't understand it. They would be quicker to take out their cell phones and record an officer interacting with a criminal trying to arrest them before they would turn around and just dial 911. People have to understand their names are not given out. You call 911, you say there's something going on, and this is so absurd that in this day and age, this can occur. But this is the mob mentality that is created across this country by political systems and people that don't want to put the police in charge and let the prosecutors prosecute these crimes the way they should be. These individuals, I can guarantee you, thought nothing would happen to them because they were emboldened to do this. And I've seen this before. This young lady is amazing. All right. The fact that she's up there speaking about this soon, now she's telling me that the cops were nonchalant. I guarantee you they'll be going over the body cam of those police officers. And if they did not take the appropriate action by calling for backup, by treating this seriously, I'm sure the police chief is going to review their actions as well, as it should be. Yeah. This is so ridiculous. And I watched this beat down so many times, and the punch she took to the face, she's not lying when she's telling you the neurological effects for this are going to be lifelong. She took a punch in the face that most guys cannot take, that most prize fighters cannot take. This man wound up and took a shot at her and knocked her out cold. Her head hit the ground. And Elizabeth, this has got to be something. What if the roles were reversed and it was a crowd of white people beating up blacks? It would be called a hate crime right off the bat. I hope this is a hate crime. I hope that the FBI gets involved and takes that audio that she says is unclear and makes it clear, and see what the verbiage was used that, between these individuals.
Yeah, it's interesting because getting back to this bystander effect, Joe, not only did they just watch and record it like it was an entertainment event or something, nobody stepped in to stop it except Holly. That's how Holly got hit. She tried to stop one man from being severely beaten, and that's how she got hit.
Absolutely. And look at the extent of her injuries, Elizabeth. There's hand marks on her throat. They would be quicker to prosecute a cop for just trying to, in effect, arrest if the cop's hands went anywhere near somebody's, throat area. Right. This is ridiculous in this day and age. And I applaud Bernie Moreno for going in there and taking the action he's taken right now, because this is what it's going to take on a statewide level, starting over here in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then bringing it across this country to stop this mob rule, this mob mentality. Right. If one of them would have had, Elizabeth, if any one of them would have had steel-toed boots on, it'd be another disaster too, because that's how they killed somebody over here in New York. This is an outright disgrace.
It is. Joe Cardinale, we are not going to hear the last of this story by a long shot. Senator Bernie Moreno introducing legislation to, make it illegal to just stand there and watch a terrible crime like that and do nothing to call for help or get help or stop what's happening. Really great to talk to you and get your perspective, the police perspective on all this. Appreciate it.
Anytime.
All right, and more of that interview with Hawley will be airing in Cuomo in the next hour. And switching gears now to two big stories that we have been covering this week as well, both with major developments today to report. First, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just made it official, confirming he does intend to occupy all of Gaza. And yes, that includes the areas where the hostages are still being held. He also claims he doesn't want Israel to govern the enclave, that he hopes eventually to hand it over to what he calls Arab forces, anyone but Hamas. Now, this is a decision that has been met with fierce domestic opposition in Israel, not the least by senior members of Israel's own military. The IDF chief of staff, Eyal Zamir, has already made it clear that the Gaza operation has, quote, met and even exceeded its objectives. Reports also say Zamir is very worried that a total occupation of Gaza will end up with the lives of the hostages being at risk. It's a fear shared by many ordinary Israelis. Protests have broken out in Tel Aviv and Jerusalem tonight, with marchers saying that a total occupation of Gaza would be a death sentence for both hostages and Israeli soldiers. And then there's the war in Ukraine, with a potential meeting between President Trump and President Putin could take place within days. And Putin no longer has to meet with Zelensky to make that happen. We'll get into that story next. Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin have a storied and complicated history, and a new chapter may be written next week. A face-to-face meeting between the two could happen in the coming days. The Kremlin confirmed the sit-down today in principle. The news comes one day before Trump's ceasefire deadline for Moscow, and one day after White House envoy Steve Witkoff held 3-hour talks with the Russian president. White House officials had said any meeting with Trump wouldn't happen unless Putin met with Zelensky as well. But President Trump walked that back late this afternoon.
Does Putin have to meet with Zelensky in order and before you and Putin have to meet? Or
No.
The president also said it's up to Putin whether he meets the ceasefire deadline tomorrow or faces punishing sanctions. Either way, the White House tells NewsNation if and when Trump does meet Putin, it'll be more than just a photo op.
This potential meeting will not be a meeting for the sake of a meeting. This will only be if the president feels that Vladimir Putin is committed to doing what the president has promised on day one, which was ending this war once and for all.
So far, despite all the talk, Putin's actions indicate a desire to ramp up the war, not down. Since Trump returned to the White House in January, Russia has more than doubled the number of strikes on Ukraine, with more than 6,000 missiles and drones fired last month alone. Let's get insight now from Bill Taylor, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine, now a distinguished fellow with Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Ambassador, great to have you here. So the Kremlin is jumping today to tout a summit. The Washington Post called it a diplomatic coup for Putin. Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, Elizabeth. The Russians clearly want this meeting. Putin clearly wants this meeting with President Trump. He has been, he's a pariah. I mean, he's been excluded from all discussions. He's been, he's an indicted war criminal. So the International Criminal Court has indicted him.
There's an arrest warrant out for him.
There's an arrest warrant, which limits how he can travel. You're exactly right. So Putin wants to be able to come back in from the cold, and a meeting with President Trump does that. So Putin is the one who really wants this meeting.
Ukrainian President Zelensky has been asking to meet with Putin and Trump for months now. This afternoon, President Trump said that he would meet with Putin even if there is no meeting with Zelensky. Is that a mistake? How can there be a peace deal without Ukraine at the table?
Of course there cannot. Of course there cannot. There has to be a Ukrainian view expressed in any deal. If they're going to be talking about Ukraine, if they're going to be talking about a ceasefire, which is apparently what's going on, then Ukraine will have to be part of that. If there's a ceasefire without Ukraine, it's not a ceasefire. It won't work. And as your interviewer just said, they want results from this meeting. They want results, and they won't get results if one party is not represented.
Yeah, Trump has held off meeting one-on-one with Putin until he's convinced he can get results and until he's convinced that Putin actually wants a peace deal. This breakthrough seems to have happened after Steve Witkoff met with Putin for 3 hours yesterday. What might have happened in that 3-hour meeting to suddenly change things?
It's a good question. It's not obvious. Secretary Rubio made some observations about that, and he said that coming out of that meeting, Witkoff and Putin, there was new information or more specificity about what the Russians want. But there's no change in what the Russians want. The Russians want Ukraine to surrender, to capitulate, and of course the Ukrainians will not.
Well, we shall see what happens tomorrow when this big deadline that Trump imposed for a ceasefire by tomorrow. I mean, it's not even clear what needs to happen by tomorrow to get those secondary sanctions to kick in as penalties, or if that'll even happen. We shall see, I guess, in the next 24 hours. Ambassador Bill Taylor, great to have you and your expertise on the show. Thank you.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
All right, as the fighting continues, military drones continue to be the greatest innovation of that war to date, I guess, if you think a great innovation is something that kills people. But Ukraine has developed some innovative ways of defending itself against Russia's drones. One of them is a volunteer group made up almost entirely of women who've made it their mission to take down those drones. They call themselves the Witches of Bucha. By day, they work normal jobs. By night, they lace up and shoot down enemy drones. NewsNation's Robert Sherman got an inside look at their lives in and out of uniform. He joins us live from Ukraine. Robert, I'm fascinated. Tell me about these women.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth, it's a tense job, as you can imagine, because the threats are so constant. Even just tonight, we had sirens blaring here in Kyiv as Russia, you guessed it, launched more drones at Ukraine. It really underscores this all-hands-on-deck mentality that you have here on the ground in Ukraine in order to defend the skies.
The bloodiest war in Europe since World War II has raged on for 3.5 years. Hundreds of thousands have been deployed to the front lines between the two sides, never to come home. There was a time when only Ukrainian men could serve in combat roles. That changed in 2017, and with Russia at the doorstep, the old days are long gone. Olena Silchenko already wears plenty of hats. She's a mom, runs the house, has a massage therapy business on the side, and in her spare time is a mixed martial arts fighter. A decorated one at that. But then there's this hat.
So what does this mean?
Bucha.
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 That's for her night job. When the sun sets, she finds herself deep in the woods on the outskirts of Kyiv, watching and waiting. She's one of the so-called Witches of Bucha, a near all-female group of volunteer soldiers. Their job? To defend the skies from Russia's drones.
You are the last line of defense against Russia's drones every night. What is that pressure like out here?
We can only breathe easy when we either shot them down or they are gone. Otherwise, it's vigilance and more vigilance.
There's no shortage of action, as Russian drones rain down on Ukraine practically every night. The Ukrainians estimate more than 6,000 of them were launched at their country in the month of July alone. Volunteers like Olena have to be trained and ready to go for whatever Russia puts in the air. Age, gender, none of that matters when your back is against the wall.
These are full-fledged forces of defense of Ukraine, and thanks to these women, today, most of our energy, most of our homes are intact.
For some, it's their first time picking up a weapon. The invasion left everyday civilians like Olena little choice. It was the atrocities committed in Bucha, a suburb of Kyiv raided by Russian forces at the start of the war, that spurred the formation of this group.
I didn't want to just hide in the basement. I wanted to join and help. I wanted my family and children to sleep well.
So in Olena's world, there's even more hats to juggle now.
What does that word mean to you?
Witches are women who are strong-minded and motivated. One calls herself a witch because it is going to be just how we say it and want it to be.
That's just one of many stories that you have here, Elizabeth. Practically everyone we've spoken with in Ukraine says that their day-to-day lives are consumed with finding ways in order to help their country, volunteering, donating, or in this case, defending their country in this major war that you've seen taking place here with drones threatening communities across Ukraine practically every night. Elizabeth?
Amazing, amazing to see those women. I love that one woman said, I didn't want to sit in the basement and hide and be afraid. I wanted to get out and do something. Robert Sherman, fantastic reporting yet again. Thank you. Coming up for us, our next guest wants to know, if the death penalty doesn't apply to somebody like Bryan Kohberger, who does it apply to? Plus, brand new video documenting the countdown to those killings in Idaho. That is Kohberger's car right there, circling the murder house within hours of his horrific stabbing spree. We'll have all that coming up next. Not a chilling video that we're seeing for the very first time tonight. It captures the final minutes before Bryan Kohberger committed some of the most heinous murders in Idaho state history. The video was just released, and now that Kohberger is locked away in the state's maximum security prison, he's serving life without parole for the brutal stabbing deaths of those 4 college students in November of 2022. So the camera in the video you're about to see was positioned at the house next to 1122 King Road, where Kohberger mutilated these 4 students in a frenzied knife attack. It captured, the camera, how Kohberger's now infamous white Hyundai Elantra slowly prowled the neighborhood that night, making at least 3 trips up and down the street, passing the student's house repeatedly for an entire hour, leading up to the moment when he entered the home and then committed those gruesome murders. For more, let's go live to Brian Entin, senior national correspondent with NewsNation, who's been on the story from the very start. This video, Brian, we've heard that he was casing the house, not just that night, but in months leading up to that night. But seeing it right now is quite eerie.
It's eerie, it's chilling, Elizabeth. We had seen one small snippet of the video, but now we have the full video, and it shows that he was stalking the house, that he drove by over and over again. You can see right there, we've got several different shots there of him coming around the corner next to the house. Those headlights are his white Hyundai, and he goes back and forth at least 3 times before you don't see the car for several minutes, because that's when he's actually committing the murders. We know that this is going to be a key piece of evidence during the trial. It's now been released. You also, by the way, see the DoorDash driver show up. Remember, Xana, one of the victims, ordered DoorDash before the murders, and you can see the DoorDash driver pull up and then actually walk around trying to find the house. Just awful to think about what happened after that. I want to play you a portion of audio, though, because the camera also picked up audio, Elizabeth. You can hear, and this is right around the time of the murders, you hear a dog barking, and then you can actually hear, and this to me is the most chilling part, you can hear when Kohberger speeds off after killing the 4 University of Idaho students. Look at this. And you see the way he made that corner right there, Elizabeth. The prosecutor at one point, this is before we had seen the video, but he said that this was going to be something that they presented to the jury, that he actually almost lost control. He was going so fast as he left the house and made that corner. And you can hear the audio there when he makes the turn and sort of revs his engine.
Yeah,
Elizabeth?
he's actually gunning it. You can hear that quite clearly. All right, Brian Entin. Yeah, there it is again. Brian Entin, thank you so much. For more now, we're joined by former homicide prosecutor Matt Murphy. Matt, in this new video, we see Kohberger drive past the house several times very, very slowly in the hour before the murders. In your experience, you've prosecuted so many of these kinds of homicides, not quite like this. What exactly do you think he's doing that night as he's driving past back and forth?
Well, he's working up the courage to go in. This has been something that he's been fantasizing about almost certainly for a long time. We know the car was there multiple times before the night of the murder. And then what we see in that last one is you see him fleeing Look, that's what you call consciousness of guilt. It seems like every couple of days we've got this trickle of evidence, Elizabeth. And every time I see something like this as a former prosecutor, you look at that, the evidence against Brian Koberger was so overwhelming. It is just, and every day it feels like we're learning something new. They had all the evidence they needed to convict him and sentence him to death.
And yet, of course, much to the frustration of at least one, possibly two of the families of the four victims, there was no trial. So we're getting this trickle of evidence. You spent many, many years successfully prosecuting many, many homicides. You do not agree with the prosecutor's decision in this case to take a plea deal. Why?
Well, look, I want to be fair to him. It's a tough job. But every death penalty case is a balance, okay? It's circumstances of the offense or the aggravating factors, which includes impact upon the family members. And then you balance that against factors in mitigation, things like mental illness. Was the person under the influence of drugs at the time? Was there beef between the killer and the victim? And there are certain cases, Elizabeth, and we only sought it. I sat on the committee that made that decision for 15 years in Orange County, California. We sought it in less than 4% of the cases that qualified for it. So when the case is overwhelming evidence-wise, like we see here, and the aggravating factors so substantially outweigh the mitigating factors that it's not even close. This is one of those cases. I've heard nothing in mitigation, and when the district attorney announced that he was going to change the deal, that he was going to give him death, first thing I thought was, okay, something must have come up in the investigation in the way of mitigation. Maybe he was abused as a kid. Maybe there was some mental illness that they were able to confirm, something. And the only thing that we've heard is that Brian Koberger wanted to take a deal. They all want to take the deal.
No mitigating
they go to trial.
information that would lead them to be merciful to some degree and say life in prison instead of death.
Correct. Nothing changed. And in my view, look, again, I want to be fair, the prosecutor blinked. And I don't think he should have done it. I totally disagree with it. There are times where it is perfectly appropriate to come off the death penalty. I've seen those. This, in my view, and in the view of pretty much everybody I know in law enforcement and people that are sitting on the bench and all people in the legal community that I know, everybody disagrees with this call.
You know, I think part of the reason why the families, listen, some of those families did in fact want the death penalty. They wanted an eye for an eye, so to speak, although in this case, you know, it's 4 lives that he took and it was being 1 life in this death penalty case. But the other reason I think some of these families have said they wanted this to go to trial is they wanted to know why. And, you know, we don't know why. We still don't know why. We know that he cased this house. We know police say he had no connection. But we also know that he was on his phone searching for pornography that included, you know, really women who are drugged, asleep, or passed out, unconscious in some way. This is some really sick stuff.
That's right, and that's another beef I've got with the prosecutor on this. He came out the day that they announced the plea, and he said that there was no sexual component. That's the word that he used. And saying there's no sexual assault that happened at the scene because whatever his plan was went pear-shaped, right? He probably wasn't anticipating second woman in the bed. There's you know, Ethan
or
coming
Xana,
down.
who had just who heard
Correct.
something and might have come up the stairs.
Right, but to say that there's no component, when Mr. Gonzalez said he had a conversation with one of the detectives, he said he found choke porn on his computer. You see that all the time in cases of serial killers, and I've personally prosecuted 13 of them. When you get into their electronic devices, if the case is in the modern era, you always find porn. And it's just like in a lot of sexual assault cases, you find, and not just random porn, you find pornography that is violent or sadistic that bears on the motive to commit the crime. And that's one of the problems here. Like saying there's no sexual component, he can't get in Koberger's head. And if there is pornography that's choke porn or sleeping porn, all of that indicates very strongly, like in the majority of serial killer cases, that there's a sexual motivation behind this, whether he accomplished it when he was there or not. So and I like to think that this guy just misspoke, the prosecutor, but this is hard on the families. And look, the reasons, there are a lot of good reasons, all of which are real as far as the appellate process, and it's the highest level of appellate scrutiny, and the families really do have to go through a lot. But when I watched Olivia Gonzalez in that courtroom going
She was
off on
ready for
Brian
it.
Kohberger, you can't tell me that that woman was afraid of Kohberger or the process moving forward.
no.
And my heart breaks for those families. And no, I disagree with Thompson. And look, he's on this tour right now where he's
His media tour.
Right, and he's got his 15 minutes. The problem is, in my view, my opinion here, when you have this example of this monster with no mitigating evidence that has been made public at all so far, and he's justifying his decision to come off the death penalty. If he made that decision in the first place, fine. But he didn't. He announced that he was going to go for it. Nothing changed.
Yeah.
And I think that it undermines the integrity of other death penalty cases in the 27 states and then in the federal system that still have it as an option. So there are victims' families out there across America who have to worry now because anybody who sees this prosecutor talk about how it was the right thing to do to give him a deal, he's undermining the integrity of those cases. And the jurors that are going to sit one day and hear those. That's my problem with it.
All right, Matt Murphy, really appreciate you've got a lot of experience in this area. You know what you're talking about. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts with us.
Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up for us. Recently, we told you about a nasal spray that's being tested on Alzheimer's patients that could potentially stop the condition in its tracks. Well, now we're hearing of yet another treatment for Alzheimer's, and it would reverse the damage that has been done by the disease to your brain. This could be an enormous deal for millions of Americans. We're going to dive into it next. We may be on the brink of a breakthrough for an Alzheimer's disease. A new study finds an old remedy might be the key. Researchers tested it on mice and found that lithium reversed damage already done to the brain. Now, lithium has long been a frontline treatment for bipolar disorder. This new study determined that it plays a vital role in brain health and that lower levels of the metal lithium could lead to memory decline. Conversely, steady, normal lithium levels protected mice from changes in their memory and actually restored memory in some cases. Lithium, of course, is dirt cheap. Wider testing could happen very quickly on Alzheimer's patients. Lithium treatment would be a major game changer for the 7 million people living with Alzheimer's in America. That number, by the way, is expected to double by the year 2060. Joining us now is Dr. Howard Weiner. He's a neurologist at Mass General Brigham, and he helped develop nasal spray that could help stop Alzheimer's from developing further. Dr. Weiner, great to have you back. So this new study shows lithium actually reversed memory loss in mice. That's a big deal, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a very exciting study. This isn't the first time people have looked at lithium. What they did is that they looked at brains of people who had Alzheimer's or memory problems and found that there was a decrease in certain areas of the brain, an area called the prefrontal cortex. There was less lithium there. So they took that as a clue. Then they took mice and they put them on a lithium deficient diet. They took away some of the lithium and they found that they didn't do as well, both aging mice and mice that had Alzheimer's.
And are we talking, Doctor, are we talking about the same lithium that people with bipolar disorder take?
It's the same lithium, although it may be a different formulation that they use. It may be a different formulation. By the way, there have been trials of lithium in the last 10, 15 years in people with Alzheimer's with some positive results. Not all the results are positive, but people have been doing this. What makes this an exciting study is the beautiful science that was done, looking at the brains, finding out what type of lithium you could give. So it's very exciting.
Are there plans to test this further in humans at these different doses and then maybe start prescribing it for Alzheimer's patients?
Well, I don't work with the team, so I'm sure there are plans to study it more. One of the things is that the blood tests of people with Alzheimer's didn't show lower amounts of lithium, so they have to have a way to measure it or to do it. But there's no question that this will lead to studies based on everything we know on Alzheimer's, and it could help.
You know, there are human trials already underway with your Alzheimer's treatment, this nasal spray that would slow or stop memory loss. How long will it take these FDA trials to to come to a conclusion. Can people still enroll in the trials?
Yes, our nasal spray trial with a drug called Firalimab by a company called Tiziana, it's enrolling now. And I know I spoke to you before. People can write in and we could tell them how they could enroll. Our drug would be 3 or 4 or 5 years away. The lithium, it would take 2 or 3 years to try it. It would have to be tried in large doses, in large numbers of patients, but it's 3 to 5 years away.
Okay, so about 3 to 5 years away for both, to be widely available, hugely needed right now, very little out there right now to help folks suffering with this disease. Dr. Howard Weiner, thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
All right, coming up for us, Chris Cuomo is about to sit down with board czar Tom Homan. Chris will join me with a preview of that conversation coming up next. All right, Chris Cuomo is going to be talking to board czar Tom Homan tonight. Chris, I can imagine there must be plenty of topics to discuss, but what's going to be topic number one for you?
The frustration is I want to talk to him about what he hinted at last time and what I keep hearing, which is that there's going to be a change in the policy of the sweep of deportation efforts. And that makes a lot of sense given what the president said, then unsaid, then said, then unsaid, which is farmers, hospitality, restaurant groups are coming to him and saying, we need these people. It's affecting us. And I spent a lot of time today with my producer writing something for the top of the show, explaining what that big moment was about with Stephen Moore today. I do not think it's being covered for what it actually was about, which is the midterms and what will matter most.
Yeah, well, the economy is what's going to matter most. And if people have to start paying a lot more money for all the produce that we eat, or businesses start going under because all those migrants have gone and nobody's doing those jobs, it's going to have an impact. All right, looking forward to seeing the interview. Have a great show.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.